Going to be looking at a video about line technique from David Finch. I'm going to be watching another video about line technique, and I'm going to be seeing what I can learn, the tips I can pick, the notes I can take, and how I can improve, or the things that I need to work on, like when doing line art for comics. So let's just get into it and let's just see how it goes. Yeah.
About shape language. If you're familiar with the concept of shape language, it's very likely that you're thinking about something to do with painting. As I understand it, in painting, shape language is all about using brushstrokes to describe form. And true masters of shape language can create paintings that are beautiful not only in their subject matter, composition, and use of lighting, but also in the visible technique and the way that the paint was laid down. But in this video, we're going to talk about how we can use shape language to bring our line art to the next level. So to start with, I've gone ahead and drawn two figure examples. The first one
So he has already drawn out.
curves, but in this video, we're going to talk
He
about
has he has drawn some figures, so I'm going to have to draw those figures to like catch up with what he's talking about.
We can use shape language to bring our line art to the next level. So to start with, I've gone ahead.
Alright, let's see. He has two figures over here, and I think he's doing them to sort of like illustrate what's up. I'll just let it run for a while and let's see what he's talking about before I actually take action.
Drawn two figure examples. The first one uses nothing but simple curves, and the second one uses nothing but straight lines. In the first example, you can see you end up with something that, while anatomically correct enough, it looks very soft and really doesn't have a lot of believability. I'm sure you've seen a lot of examples of anatomy drawn this way, and it's possible this is something you might have run into in your own work and not known why it ends up looking the way that it does. In the second example, I've used nothing but straight lines, and you can see that I end up with something that looks very, very rigid. It actually looks somewhat better than the first example, I think, but it's also a very, very limited approach. And the second example is why I think that telling people to use a lot of hard edges and to not use curves is maybe a little bit of a mistake, and it doesn't really tell the whole picture. I've actually given that advice myself, and I've really learned that it's a little bit more complex than that. I've got a third figure lightly sketched in, but before we get there, I want to give you a quick overview of the kind of shapes that we're trying to achieve. So first I've drawn a simple curve, and you can see that it looks fine, but it really doesn't have any character to it at all. In order to take that curve to the next step, we're going to use something called a line of beauty. This is something that I've talked about quite a bit before, but I really want to go in depth into how we actually use it in practice all over a drawing. Now I'm just going to go ahead and show you the way that I tend to use a line of beauty a little bit more commonly. So I'm drawing a simple curve, and then going into a hard transition into an opposing curve, and then another hard transition back into the original curve. It's really just a variation on a softer line of beauty, but it's something that I think can give your work a little bit more edge. Unfortunately, I don't really think that drawing simple lines like this on a piece of paper is an effective way to get this concept across. So we're going to go back to our third figure drawing. We're going to take this basic shape, and we're going to use it all over
the way I understand this, he says it's line of beauty, but the way I personally understand it is like using thick to thin lines, like having good line width whenever you're looking at a drawing. Like if you look at an ink, like what actually makes that inked work that you're working on aesthetically pleasing is like if you're drawing a circle, for instance, the fact that some parts of the circle have thick sides and some parts have like thin sides or thin lines is what makes that circle a lot more aesthetically pleasing in comparison to something that is just like monotone, something that doesn't have like any sort of like character to it. Because once you do something like this, it actually tells the viewer like instinctively that it adds like shadows to the stuff. Because ideally, whenever you are using lines to draw, that is not how things look in real life. Lines are just what helps us to represent it, of course, unless you're actually doing something a lot more detailed. But usually lines, like really we don't have like lines around us whenever we look at our hands or like our bodies. What we usually have is values. We have light and dark, there's an interaction, there's contrast, right? That actually create visual impact whenever we are looking at an image. So what can help us get closer to that is if we're using what he said, like line of beauty, or like two thick to thin lines whenever we are drawing, because that's is what's going to like make it look pretty, and give it some depth, give the image that you're drawing some depth.
Figure to give us something that has much more pleasing shape language. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with my bicep. I'm creating a curve going outward, and then
you know what, I'm actually have to go back and draw like this stuff that he drew over here, so that like I just have to sketch it so that I can see and just like follow his technique. So you have to be patient with me. Have to be patient with me. Let me just quickly sketch this out. You know what, this pen is annoying me. It's not thick enough. I think I need this bigger brush. Yep, now we're talking. I need this bigger brush. I have our center line over here. We're going to have this guy like this. Then we're going to have the chest, which is going to come out like this. You're going to see that clavicle popping up like that. And then we're going to see this sketched out like this. Same thing here, we're going to have a clavicle out like that. Then we're going to have a chest. And then our, what the hell do they call this? Trap muscles? Our traps. We're going to have our traps. Then we're going to have our arms. The deltoid muscle. I need to adjust the size just a little bit. I don't think I got the expression of the character in terms of how the body is positioned. So I might have to. That's why I like this pen. This pen just allows you to just experiment. I like it for sketching. Not like that one is like awful. It's just this one gives you more room. Alright, so we have this deltoid shape, triceps, biceps, hands. Then we have this. So let's try and get the shape. Try to get the shape first of all before the rest. Alright, I think we're good. We can get back to the video now, I think. Is the hair too small? Okay, no. Okay, I think we're good now. I think we're good. We have our sketch, so let's catch up with him. I think you might actually need to put the face. A little bit of detailing on the face, nothing much, just a little bit. Go to recent. One way is because usually whenever you're drawing head like in these types of angles, like either side view or just a little bit of three-quarter view, one mistake I always made is that I'll just like divide it into like two, the parts of the head into two, and that will be all. But actually there's another division that has to occur, because this is like the first part of the mask, and actually there's a second part of the mask which is like this. But if you just divide it like just between like just 1 and 2, it's going to be difficult, because there should be 1, 2, and 3, which will allow enough space for the rest of the skull and enough space for your like the parts of the face that needs to be added, and things won't look like out of place or not so proportional. All right, so we have this. Let's put this here like this. We're going to have our eyes and our nose and our mouth. and you notice that you won't actually have issues with drawing in terms of proportions, right? You won't have issues with them with proportions. And that is something I learned recently, like very recently. I learned this very recently. So no matter the stage, and I'm someone that I've been drawing for years, for a very long time. Usually I'll just get it by instinct, but like now that I have like a technique to it, it's a lot more simpler for me. I'm just going to put this like this, just a little bit of the muscles here and there. The sternocleidomastoid. All right, and it looks good. It looks all right. Yeah. All right, I think that's enough for now. Did I make it too much? No, it's all right. It's all right.
We're going to go back to our third figure drawing. We're going to take this basic shape and we're going to use it all over the figure to give us something that has much more pleasing shape language. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my bicep. I'm creating a curve going outward and then opposing the curve for the long curve of the bicep, and then creating an opposing curve.
One thing I like with his pencil is that he can look at how thick he can like go, and that's like a problem I kind of have with mine sometimes. Anyways, we'll still work with it. You know what? I'm because this is actually the penciling stage. It's not the inking. But I'll still make it look good. I'll still make it look good. Let's see.
Again, going the other way. For the tricep, I'm going to do essentially the same thing, an inward curve connecting to an outward curve and then connecting to another inward curve as we go down. And it really is just using opposing curves over and over again, really over the course of the entire drawing. Going into our deltoid, the same thing again. A simple curve, a hard transition followed by an opposing curve to give us the bottom of the deltoid. And you can see the difference between that technique and the first drawing where it's just a simple curve all the way through and it really has no character. So continuing with the deltoid, I'm going along the top and just connecting my curves again, making sure to curve, create a hard point, and then go into an opposing curve. And then I'm going down through the elbow, curving. I'm creating a small line of beauty below the elbow. It just describes so much more forms in a much more fluid way. Coming to the inside of the arm, simple opposing curves. I've got a hard transition, but it's relatively soft. And now just continuing those same shapes. For this smaller shape here, I've actually come out and created a bit of a harder point. It's something I can get away with for smaller details on a figure, and it can give it a lot of character. But you want to avoid that for some of your larger forms. It can get a little bit distracting. Now I'm going down through the muscles on my forearm. I get asked a lot about how to draw forearms. And the truth is that my knowledge of all those little muscles that make up your forearm and your finger extensors is relatively limited. I have a basic sense of where they all go, but what really makes it work is just using this simple shape language consistently across the form. In order to make it work though, you need to bear in mind that you're essentially drawing football shapes that connect for your muscles. And this is something that I've shown before, but just to drive the point home, here are some simple shapes that are all connected together, and so your muscles actually connect and form a bit of a network. If you don't have those connections working, your muscles will look like they're just floating in space and will start to just look like lines on paper. Now for his chest, I'm going to go a little bit concave and then come around complex. Let me just accentuate that just a little bit more, just like that. It isn't really necessary to hit every single form with an opposing curve, but I think when you're learning this, it's probably a good idea to really think in those terms. It is possible to push a concept to the point where it actually starts to become distracting and can start to take away from the final drawing. So you do have to be a little bit careful. I'm going to go ahead and draw the edge of his rib cage. You can see in my first curved example that the rib cage really doesn't have a natural flow at all, and it looks a little bit artificial. And then the second example, it's a little bit better at describing the form, but it's very rigid. And
Let me catch up with that arm that he's drawing. have a lot to learn, have a lot to learn. Sometimes when you're doing these studies, because of how you're trying to like follow the rules, you might end up actually like doing rubbish and making what you did ugly. But that's the importance of studying. You then figure out your weak points, and then you're able to say, "Oh, all right, I like the way he talked about this. I like what he did, but I may not 100% follow every single thing he did in terms of like how he approaches like inking. Even though what he's saying might be making sense, but you might choose to leave that single imperfection in your own art because you just like it. You just like that little thing about your art, and that's what creates art style in general, right? You have a playlist of artists that you like their artistic choices and decisions, but you decide not to follow every single thing that they do or say.
It still looks very artificial. Really not interesting looking, but it also really look anatomically accurate because the body actually does have a lot of natural line of beauty type fluidity to it. So now I'm going to go down in through the stomach, and for my first stomach muscle, I'm going to create a simple line of beauty again and connect it up to the rib cage, and another one for the other side, and down through the stomach muscles, just using that same concept. And you can see already that the stomach has a lot more natural flow to it, and it looks much more realistic, just with a simple line of beauty. Connecting up all of my.
I need to look at this again. Give me a moment, let me catch up. Look at those shapes.
Serratus, and then moving down into the oblique, and it's a curve followed by an opposing curve, and then coming up to the side of the stomach. Now getting the other side of the oblique in, using the exact same technique, connecting it in to make sure that my muscles all work together. Now just drawing in the edge of his buttock, drawing a curve followed by an opposing curve, this time with a hard transition. Sometimes I'll use a hard transition if I want it to be just a little bit more rigid, and sometimes I'll go softer if I want a softer form. I really feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, and I am, but I strongly recommend that you draw this along with me, and you'll very, very quickly get a sense of just how much of this you can internalize very, very quickly. It becomes automatic before you know it, and it will just become part of your drawing vocabulary, and I think it will make your drawing much, much stronger. Now, at this point, we're going to go into another aspect of shape language, and that is in our shadowing. This is a place where we actually will start to cross over into something more akin to what you would imagine shape language to be in painting. And this is an example of a figure drawing by Jeffrey Watts, and the shadows in
Wow,
this are
that's really
incredibly
nice.
believable, but also really artfully produced. They have a beautiful confidence and flow. And in order to achieve that, he's using the same techniques that we'll be using here for our shadows.
This
And
takes a
hopefully
lot
you can
of
see how
time, I
much they
can't lie.
naturally build on the shapes that we've already established in our simple line drawing. Before we get there, though, I want to go ahead and just start to establish some line weight. So I'm lighting this.
Oh, you're done with it already, man. Yo, man, come on, man. Or did I make an error? Did I make an error with how I positioned it? I'm feeling like I made an error with how I positioned the muscle. Mamma mia, mamma mia. Yep, I don't think I got it right. I don't think I got it right. Yo, look at those lines.
Here from the top left, which is really my standard lighting for most of these examples. And
Yeah, just wanted to see the face and how he placed it. I really like this line he put on the traps over here like this. I didn't do mine like he did his, so just going to get that shape. Delto pectoral groove. And then the clavicle. That needs to be curved up a bit. That's what the hell do they call that? The Adam's apple. And the thing about I've noticed like with inking like throughout is that like whenever you're doing something, you don't always need to feel it like sometimes it's good to like break lines like in this instance over there. It's good to break lines. It can just make the work just that a little bit more pretty or aesthetic. Same way you don't have to use thick and thin lines everywhere. Alfredo Di Stefano. Okay, I think that's good. Knowing how to place the overlapping muscles or figures is it's a skill in itself. It's something that takes practice. I made that edge too big. The ears. And the eyebrows. All right, let's follow.
I have a video that goes into depth on how to use line weights. I'll add a link to the video in the upper left or right corner right here, so you can go check that video out. I really recommend, if you haven't seen it, to take a look at that so you can get a sense of what we're doing here. But this is a great intermediary step between your simple flat line drawing and starting to put in shadows. Really, for a lot of artists, this is as far as you need to take your work. And just to quickly recap what we're doing with line weights, so you don't have to go watch a whole other video. If you want to just stick with this one right now, I'm going to go ahead and draw a sphere and light it the same way. So it's dark on the opposing side away from the light. And so I've gone thicker with the line. I've drawn another sphere behind it. I've gone thicker with that line too. And I make sure also to go thicker where I have connection points. And that really helps solidify forms in space. And just a little bit more. And it's almost a form of lighting. It really is a form of lighting. But it's a great way to help ease your way into the more heavy lighting that we'll do in just a minute. All right, so now that we have that established, it's time to go into our shadows. We have our lighting established.
Help me out here. Give me a minute, yeah? Let me just catch up. So we have the abs. Look how much depth his work has. Like with just line weight. Look how much depth his work has. I don't always have the patience to add like this level of detailing to my work, and that is why I really appreciate his work, because he takes his time with it. I really don't, to be honest. I don't have this level of patience, but it's still a good skill to have. That is why I am practicing it. It's a really good skill to have. Like he said, connection points are where you're going to see a lot of these line weights in action. Where you see like overlaps. How you doing, lovely? How's the school day going? How's school? Boring as usual, I guess. Getting the hang of this. I'm great. It was exhausting, but I got compliments because of my hair. You did a new hairstyle? Did you do a new hairstyle? I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. I'm doing wonderful. I'm just studying, apparently. Just studying. You tried a messy bun. It was the first time, but it looked great with my curls. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. That's nice. Happy for you. I'm happy for you. Yeah, my head is just bowed, by the way. I don't get compliments on it. So, Arim calls me a monk a lot of the time. So, monk mode, apparently. All right, I don't think we're good, but I think it's looking all right. It's having some depth. It's having some depth. I actually take that as a compliment, by the way. It's a personal decision. Like I actually kept Afro a while ago, but it's just so stressful, sometimes. Well, for me at least, that's how I feel about it. It's just so stressful. So I just decided to just keep it low, consistently. No problem, no problem. No problem. All right, let's get to the shadows.
We have our line weights drawn in, and we have our basic forms drawn in a much more natural, flowing way. And so ideally, we want our shadows to continue that theme. I've gone ahead and drawn a slight curve from under his chin and then an opposing curve over his neck and in his eye. I'm making sure to delineate my shadow very, very clearly. I want to make sure that I'm not scribbling things in and things are very clearly defined and I'm creating appealing shapes all the way through. Under his mouth, I've got a shadow.
Yeah, he's very intentional about the way he applies the shadows to his characters. And this shadow like application, it takes a while to learn. Like me, for instance, whenever I'm applying shadows on my characters, like in my comics, I usually have to use references a lot of the time. And because I haven't like taken my time to actually properly practice shadowing, it's a bit of an issue. I like the way he applied that shadows on the nose. Fuck. Alright, we have some on the nose. Beneath the nose, of course. I actually feel, based on I think the light direction is coming from here. Based on how the shadows are. Based on how it's applying the shadows, I mean.
I'm drawing a curve and then a bit of a hard point and opposing that curve the same way that I did with my other forms. And when I draw the shadow in to complete that form, you can see it's a lot more pleasing than if I was to just draw a straight curve underneath his mouth. I'm just going to go ahead and fill this area in under his pec. I already had that kind of defined, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that and fill it in. And then I'm going to shadow underneath his pec. And so I'm drawing a curve followed by an opposing curve underneath his arm. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in.
Irene showed me Hermes drawings. She's so good, but she always says it's alright. Who is Hermes? Is that like a Greek god? Who is Hermes? Oh, her new drawings. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Actually, she's seeing it from an artist's point of view. Like there are a lot of top artists. I can relate to that. There are a lot of top artists that whenever they look at their artwork, they feel it's mediocre, and a lot of the time that is mostly true. And as fellow artists, you don't want to be brutal, so you have to be positive about your criticism, because it's not like they don't know that it's not good enough. A lot of the times it's just good to compliment an artist's artwork and just said it's nice, I like what you did here. You mentioned the things you like about the art. I think that in general, that's quite good. And then if they ask you for criticism, of course you can then give your input. But if not, always err on the side of the positive. But I do understand her stance with regards to the fact that she's not satisfied, and that is a good thing. It means the person has room to grow and is willing to grow at the same time. All right. Wow. I just like the way he applies the shadows. So cool. That is such a delicious angle. Such a delicious angle. Trying to apply consistent flow to the shadows so that it doesn't look bad or anything like that.
And the direction of that curve and the opposing curve is something that you can really play with if you want. And I'm going to go ahead and do it the opposite way. So I'm curving inward and then curving outward for the bottom part. And I think it works just as well. There are times that one curve will work better than another. You really want to think about your underlying form. But for the most part, it's just using a curve and an outside curve to get that effect. So now for his deltoid, I'm drawing in a nice line of beauty curve and then filling that in. I'm going to draw the central head of his deltoid, doing the exact same thing, a nice line of beauty. I'm not drawing a simple curve. I'm not drawing something that's just hard edged, but it gives me something that is a nice medium between those with a lot of flow. I'm going to draw in a bit of a striation beside that muscle, and I'm going to use the same thing, a bit of a curve, a hard point, and then an opposing curve. And you can see how that gives me a bit of a believable looking smaller muscle in there, and it looks very, very natural. And now the same thing for the back of the...
Yo, look at that, man. That is really good. Nope. Am I missing something? No. No.
the deltoid, a curve, a bit of a hard point, an opposing curve, and that completes out the shadowing on the back of the deltoid. It really is the same kind of technique that I was using for my lines. I'm just using that technique to describe shapes that I can then fill in with shadow. Now for his chest, on the other side of his body, I'm going to go a little bit more shadowed. And so I'm going to go ahead and define a shadow shape. And you can see the same kind of line of beauty, the same thing that we've done all the way through this. It is so incredibly simple and so effective every single time. And so there it is. I'm going to draw in some striations the same way that I did on the deltoid. It really is just a line of beauty, but just a little bit more hardened, just with a hard transition point as opposed to a soft curve. And that's something that really is up to you as the artist. If you want something that's just a little softer or something that's just a little bit more aggressive in your shape, I like something that's just a little bit harder. So I like those harder transitions, but it's a choice that you have to make for what's best really for what you're trying to achieve with your work. Now for a stomach, going with a curve, an opposing curve, and then finishing it out with another opposing curve, and then just filling that in. The exact same thing for the other side of his stomach. Now I'm going to go ahead and cast a bit of a shadow from that top part onto the central part of his stomach, and then just draw the same kind of curve again. Now for this last bit, I want that to be fairly dark. We're turning away from the light. It's being heavily shadowed from the stomach above, and because that's heavily shadowed, I'm going to go ahead and shadow that oblique muscle in beside it. So much of my lighting, I really do work out in terms of connecting shapes like this. I don't think of lighting an entire picture all at once because it would be incredibly daunting. What I do is I take each individual piece and I shadow them one after the other. I try to bear in mind how far around, if it were a sphere, how far around that sphere it is away from the light, and shadow it accordingly. So if it's up toward the light, obviously I don't want shadow. The further away it gets the light, the darker it's going to get, or the more wide the shadow is going to be across the form. So I want to quickly show, I've got a small shadow just along his stomach, and it's using a simple hardened line of beauty, and then I'm just filling it in from below with shadow, and you can see that I can just connect it, fill it in, and my natural shapes that I'm using for my line drawing really lend themselves well to creating nice looking shadow shapes. And you can see how much more effective that is than if I was to just draw something that is completely hard edged or soft. And so I'm going to just repeat that all the way through all of my serratus. The same basic shape. It's very, very natural and easy to do. I really recommend, again, that you draw this along with me. Give it a try, and it will become automatic before you know it. His lat's turning away from the light, and that whole form is really turning away from the light, so you can see that I'm going wider with my shadow. I'm covering more of the form with the shadow as I go down through and rounding it up toward the light. So it makes it very, very simple to take your lighting and make it work over a larger form if you just think about it in those terms. Put a shadow onto my oblique. And then finish the shadow on my stomach using the same technique again. Now we're going to go ahead and move into the arm. I'm working on the deltoid and dropping my shadow in along the shadowed side of the deltoid. I'm describing a little bit of a vein in there. And so I'm leaving just a little notch open so I can start to put that in. And I'm just using the very same shape that I've got right there to describe my tricep muscles. And I've got a connecting muscle between the bicep and the tricep. And you can see if I went round with it or if I went hard with it, I can get that in there, but it really doesn't look believable. And so I'm just going to go ahead and just...
You just have to like follow him. Is quite fast, so following him can be quite... What the hell is going on? Oh yeah, it's an error. Oh, okay. I've been turning myself into a seahorse based on my actual pose. All right, but yeah, I think that's the apps done. Don't think I did it well, to be fair. Nothing wrong with correcting it if you feel like you did something that is shit. That's what's that? Is that our serratus? Yes, serratus muscle. Serratus muscle. Alright, there's a lot of thick shadows for the serratus muscle over here. Let's add some of it. If you don't try this type of shadows, like if you're like someone that is looking to do comic books, if you don't try these shadows and like style of adding line weight and stuff like that, like just for practice, not necessarily for you know for like, how would I put it? You need to try it for practice. Like you need to try to actually practice this stuff. Like nothing serious, not like a serious artwork. The work doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to try it out so that your hand can get the muscle memory and experience that it needs, and so that you can actually draw something nice. I don't always apply it because these days I don't apply too much blacks. Well, actually, that's a lie. I apply more blacks than I did before. What I have reduced adding to my art is hatching lines. I've reduced hatching lines. Alright, look at that thick shadow over here. That's really good. Am I missing something? No, you're not. Okay. All right, that's nice. That's nice.
Use the same very simple, slightly hardened line of beauty and quickly throw that in. And now for the extensors in my forearm, I'm going to use the exact same thing that I've been doing this whole time. I'm much more worried about creating nice looking shapes with my basic line of beauty than I am about exactly where every muscle goes and making sure that it's perfectly anatomically correct. You'll actually make a drawing that's much more believable looking with good shape language than you will with perfect anatomy. Now, for the tendons along the back of his hand, I see this very, very often, where they're just drawn as very simple straight lines, and it looks incredibly unrealistic. So just using a little bit of shape language makes those lines look so much more. And I see this very, you will with.
Let me copy this. Am I missing something? I think so far it's looking all right. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it's okay. How do they call this muscle? Mm, sorry, that's the extensor, flexors, and there's one more. There's one more name for the muscle. Can't remember. Uh, brachioradialis. I like how there's just that little line that just comes over here like that. All these are intentional actually, if you think about it. Very intentional.
Perfect anatomy. Now, for the tendons along the back of his hand, I see this very, very often, where they're just drawn as very simple straight lines, and it looks incredibly unrealistic. So just using a little bit of shape language makes those lines look so much more organic. They actually read as much more believable. It's the same basic form, but you can see how this takes it so much further. It makes it so much more believable. I'm going to go ahead and start to draw in some form for his face. Some of this I'm not really going to want to light, but what I want to do is just to start to sketch in some of the planes of my face and show you just how much using the same basic shapes that we've been using gives you such a nice flow along his cheek, along his jaw, and all around all of the planes of the face. And so that's it. I've said this a couple of times, but I highly, highly recommend that you try this one. I really don't think this is something you can pick up just by looking at it. Give the kind of line of beauty that I like to use a try. Try a simple curved line of beauty, and then try a line of beauty that has a bit more of a hard transition in it. And then draw this figure or draw your own figure and really try to use it everywhere in your own work and the difference that it will make in the overall quality of what you do. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
All right, so he has done it, so let me just copy it and catch up. Look at that line. Oh, you even added the shadows for the ears. What am I missing? The back of the head. What other part of the face am I missing? Yo, play it again. Wanted to watch that. Esteva. Fixing up the hands.
Shape language makes those line.
All right. We're almost an hour. Almost an hour. Been doing this almost an hour. All right. I think I'm good. I think I'm done. Yo, have a nice day. Lovely. Thanks for joining, by the way. Thanks for joining. I'll see you later. Okay, no problem. I'll let her know. Look how quickly he applies the shadows. I'm gonna get this good one day. One day, I'm gonna get this good. I see you. Have a lovely rest of the day. No pun intended.
Looks so much more organic. They actually read as much more believable. It's the same basic form, but you can see how this takes it so much further. It makes it so much more believable. I'm going to go ahead and start to draw in some form for his face. Some of this I'm not really going to want to light, but what I want to do is just to start to sketch in some of the planes of my face and show you just how much, using the same basic shapes that we've been using, gives you such a nice flow along his cheek, along his jaw, and all around all of the planes of the face. And so that's it. I've said this a couple of times, but I highly, highly recommend that you try this one. I really don't think this is something you can pick up just by looking at it. Give the kind of line of beauty that I like to use a try. Try a simple curved line of beauty, and then try a line of beauty that has a bit more of a hard transition in it. And then draw this figure or draw your own figure and really try to use it everywhere in your own work and the difference that it will make in the overall quality of what you do. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
All right, let me compare and contrast with his work. Mm, supposed to be around the clavicle. All right, so what else? I need to learn to get these shadows all on my own without necessarily depending on reference. I think that is one weak point to my art at the moment. All right, I think we did all right. I think we did good. It's not perfect, but it's good. I like the way it is. Let's compare the shadows with this is the sketch. This is the ink. Not necessarily ink, but like the black and white. The black and white. I like the line weight, very good line weight. And then there's the shadows. Without the shadows, with the shadows. Yeah, I think it's all right. I think it's good. Um, this was a nice exercise. I think I'll do another video. I have another live stream coming up, so if you're still around, you can always check it out when I come live. I might even do that live immediately. It's actually scheduled for 9 p.m. but like it's another David Finch video. But I'll run it through. Remember, my goal is sort of like to get through all his videos and like learn, see what I can pick up. One thing he didn't add with a lot of these videos is the hatching lines. Usually he adds hatching lines to his work. So you usually see him like do stuff like this, put hatching lines here and there. But he has a video for that, and I think I've even done a video where I studied it and I sort of like explained it. So you can check that out, because I think that's the next stage from this. So from line weight or line of beauty, the next stage is the shadowing. From the shadowing, you can then do the cross hatching, and that's the next phase. But anyways, I'll stop the video here. Thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate everyone. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.